My name's Sarah, 51 years young, or old, depending on the kind of day I'm having. If you're expecting a tale of whimsy or a life that's been anything but ordinary, you might as well grab a seat because it's been one heck of a ride. Let's start with the heart of my world, Emily. My girl, my everything. Raising her on my lonesome wasn't part of the dream, you know? Her dad decided a fresh start was in order, across the globe, no less, leaving us high and dry. That man swapped us out like last season's wardrobe, and before I knew it, he had himself a shiny new family. So, there it was, just me and Em against the world. My days? They blurred into one long shift, juggling jobs like a circus act. The diner by day, the bar by night, and on good days, a bit of cleaning work squeezed in between. Sleep was a luxury, a fleeting visitor between shifts. But seeing Emily smile, hearing her laugh, that was the real paycheck. But Em, bless her, she's 23 and still figuring out life's big puzzle. Jobs? She's had more than a few, but none stuck. It's the boss, Ma, he's a real piece of work. Or, I can't deal with customers, they're all insane. Excuses as colorful as a painter's palette. Each job ended with her back on our couch, phone in one hand, remote in the other. And me? I just couldn't stay mad at her. It's alright, Em. Something better will come along, I'd say, hiding the worry gnawing at my gut. Because that's what you do when you love someone, you wear the world's troubles so they don't have to. One particularly rough day, after a double shift that had me more bone than flesh, I came home to find Emily sprawled on the sofa, a mess of job application forms scattered around like confetti. Hey, Ma, she greeted without looking up, her attention glued to the TV screen. Hey, kiddo. Anything bite today? I asked, shedding my coat and the weight of the day. She shrugged, a gesture I knew all too well. Nah, it's all crap. Why bother? They don't want to pay a living wage anyway. I sighed, a mix of exhaustion and frustration brewing. Em, we talked about this. You gotta start somewhere, right? Can't be picky in times like these. Whatever, Ma. It's easy for you to say. You're used to busting your back for peanuts, she fired back, her words sharp like a knife. That stung. Not gonna lie. But anger? It never had a place in our home. I bit back the retort simmering on my tongue and instead, forced a smile. Maybe so, kiddo. But those peanuts kept a roof over our heads and food on the table. Someday, you'll understand that. Emily rolled her eyes, the universal sign of young adult disdain. Sure, Ma. I'm hitting the sack. Night. Watching her disappear into her room, a part of me ached. Ached for her to see the world not as an adversary, but as a challenge to be met head-on. Yet, there I was, picking up the scattered forms, tidying up the living remnants of her latest defeat. The thing about life is, just when you think you've got it all figured out, it throws you a curveball. And not the kind you can hit out of the park. No, I'm talking about the kind that hits you square in the chest and leaves you gasping for air. That's exactly what happened the day Emily decided to drop her little bombshell. It was a Tuesday, not that it matters, but I remember because Tuesdays were meatloaf nights. I was in the kitchen, elbows deep in ground beef, when Emily waltzed in, her face all lit up like a Christmas tree. Behind her trailed Alex, a guy I'd seen maybe once or twice before. I didn't have anything against him, but let's just say he wouldn't be my first pick for a son-in-law. Not that I was thinking about that kind of stuff, until I had to. Ma, guess what? Emily chirped, bouncing on her heels. I glanced over, eyebrow raised. You finally decided to clean your room? She rolled her eyes, a grin spreading across her face. Funny, Ma. No, better. Alex and I got married. You know that feeling when your heart skips a beat? Yeah, mine skipped, tripped, and fell flat on its face. Married? I echoed, my voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. Alex stepped forward, a sheepish smile plastered on his face. Yeah, Mrs. S., we eloped last weekend. Surprise? Surprise was an understatement. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. Eloped? I repeated, still processing. And you're just telling me now? Emily's excitement dimmed a bit, replaced by a defensive edge. I knew you'd react like this, Ma. That's why we didn't tell you before. But it's done. And we're happy, aren't we, Alex? Alex nodded, slipping an arm around her. Yeah, totally happy. I put down the mixing spoon, wiping my hands on my apron. This was a conversation that needed my full attention. And where, pray tell, do you plan on living? I asked, already dreading the answer. Well, here, Emily said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. With you, Ma. Where else? Where else indeed? I took a deep breath, trying to tamp down the rising tide of frustration. Emily, honey, you're married now. Don't you think it's time you, I don't know, started your own life? Somewhere that's not here? Her face fell. Ma, you know we can't afford that. Alex's job doesn't pay much, and I'm still looking. Looking. Right. The eternal job hunter. I looked from her to Alex, who seemed content to let Emily do the talking. Something about the set of his jaw irked me, the way he seemed to assume this was all fine and dandy. Look. I started, trying to keep my voice even. I love you, Emily. You know I do. But this isn't what I wanted for you. For either of us. Emily's response was swift and sharp. What, Ma? You didn't want me to be happy? Is that it? No, of course not, I countered, feeling the conversation slip away from me. I thought you'd want more. That you'd strive for more. More what, Ma? More work? More nights alone? Thanks, but I'll pass on that. The conversation spiraled from there, each word more heated than the last. Alex tried to chime in, but he might as well have been a fly buzzing around a hurricane. This was between me and my daughter, and it was clear neither of us was going to budge. In the end, we called a truce, but the air remained thick with unsaid things. Alex moved in the next day, his belongings taking up space in a home that suddenly felt too small. I retreated into myself, wondering where I'd gone wrong, how my little girl had grown so far from the dreams I'd had for her. The day I found out about the cancer was the day my world flipped on its head. I'd been feeling off for a while, but cancer? That word felt like a freight train hitting me at full speed. The doctor was gentle about it, but the words still stung. It's treatable, he said. But you'll need to focus on your health, maybe even take some time off work. Work. My lifeline, the thing that kept us afloat all these years, and now I was being told to step back from it. I headed home, the weight of the diagnosis crushing me. The house was quiet when I got in, too quiet. Emily was in her room, probably lost in her phone, and Alex, well, Alex was Alex, doing whatever it was that he did. I needed them, needed their support, so I called them both to the living room. Guys, we need to talk, I started, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to sound strong. Emily looked up, her eyes wide. What's up, Ma? You look like hell. I sighed, not sure how to say the words. I've got cancer, I blurted out, the words feeling alien and heavy on my tongue. There was a moment of silence, and then Emily's face changed, but not in the way I'd hoped. Cancer? But, what does that mean, for, us? Her question caught me off guard. Well, it means I'll be going through treatment, and I had to quit my job to focus on getting better. The room went cold. Alex, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke up. Quit your job? How are we supposed to live, then? My job barely covers my stuff. I stared at them, disbelief washing over me. This was their concern? Not my health, not the battle I was about to face, but their comfort? Emily chimed in, her tone sharp. Yeah, Ma, how could you not think about us? What are we supposed to do now? The disappointment hit me like a second diagnosis. My own daughter, the girl I'd raised, sacrificed for, was more worried about her financial comfort than my fight for life. I thought you'd be worried about me, about what I'm going through," I said, my voice breaking. "Well, of course, we're worried," Emily said, her voice softening just a touch. "But we've got to be practical here. You can't just quit and expect everything to be okay." Alex nodded in agreement. "Yeah, it's not just about you anymore. We've got to think about the future." The future. Their future apparently didn't include the possibility of me not being in it. I realized then what I'd done, or rather, what I hadn't done. I'd raised a daughter who saw me not as a person fighting for her life, but as a means to an end, a financial safety net. After weeks of harsh treatments, the hospital finally sent me home. I was a shell of my former self, hollowed out by radiation and chemotherapy, clinging to the hope that within the familiar walls of my home, I might find some solace, some shred of normalcy. But what greeted me was far from the support and care I had envisioned. The air at home had shifted, it was thick with tension, heavy with unspoken resentments. My daughter, Emily, and her husband, Alex, had taken to treating me more like an inconvenient guest than family. Their patience wore thin at the slightest provocation, their words sharp and cutting. One day, trying to make myself a cup of tea, my hands betrayed me, trembling from the weakness that had become my constant companion. The mug slipped, shattering on the floor, with a sound that seemed to echo my own fragility. The crash brought Emily storming into the kitchen. "Seriously, Ma? Can't you do anything right? Look at this mess." Her words were like daggers, and I stood there, mute, the shards of the broken mug mirroring the pieces of my heart. "I'm sorry, Em. I didn't mean to." My apology was cut short by Alex's voice, barely a whisper yet loud enough to carry his disdain. "How tired you are, you sick old woman." Their words, sharp and unforgiving, were a far cry from the care I had hoped for, the love I thought we shared. Each day was a battle, not against the cancer that ravaged my body, but against the coldness that had taken root in my own home. I moved through the days and a days, my every action, every sound, seemingly an annoyance to them. Asking for help became an exercise in humiliation. "Em, could you help me up?" I'd ask, reaching out for support. The response was always the same, a huff of irritation, a reminder of her own priorities. "And so there are plenty of things to do, and you too," she'd snap, leaving me to fend for myself. Night after night, I cried myself to sleep, the sound of my sobs a solitary lament in the silence of the house. I was a burden, a nuisance in my own home, my presence an unwelcome reminder of the fragility of life. Due to constant stress, my health deteriorated, and I was admitted to the room again. After weeks of silence and solitude in the hospital, the last person I expected to see was Emily. Her visits had become as rare as a cool breeze in a heat wave, and yet, there she was, standing at the foot of my hospital bed, looking every bit as uncomfortable as I felt surprised. "Hey, Ma," she started, avoiding my gaze. "How you feeling?" The casualness of her question, as if she'd been by my side all along, stung. "Been better," I replied, my voice raspy from disuse. "What brings you here, Em? Finally decided to check on your old mother?" She fidgeted, looking anywhere but at me. "Yeah, well, there's something we need to talk about. It's about the house." The house. My sanctuary, the only legacy my grandmother left me, and our only real home. A lump formed in my throat. "What about it?" Emily finally met my gaze, her eyes hard. "Alex and we've been talking, and we think it's best if you know, transfer the house to us. Legally, I mean." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Transfer the house? To you and Alex? Why on earth would I do that?" She crossed her arms, her discomfort replaced by defiance. "Because, Ma, it's practical. Alex is sick of living there, like he's some sort of freeloader. We want to own it, make it ours. It's not like you're going to be around forever, anyway." Her words felt like a slap. The audacity, the sheer insensitivity. My own daughter, viewing my home, my life, as nothing more than a transaction to secure her future comfort. You think I'm just going to hand over everything because your husband doesn't like feeling like a guest? In my own house? It's not just that, Ma. It makes sense. You're here, sick, and who knows for how long. We're thinking about the future. The future? I echoed, incredulous. And what about my future, Emily? Did you ever stop to think about that? Or is it just about what you and Alex want? She sighed, a sound of frustration and impatience. You're being unreasonable, Ma. We're just trying to be practical here. Practical? I shot back, anger and hurt swirling inside me. You're talking about my home like it's a prize to be won. I worked hard for that house, kept it through everything. And you, my own daughter, you come here, not to see how I'm doing, not to offer comfort or support, but to ask me to give up my home? For what? So you can feel more secure in your marriage? Emily looked away. I thought you'd understand, Ma. But I can see you're just too selfish to see the bigger picture. Selfish? The accusation was a bitter pill to swallow. My whole life, I'd given everything to Emily, sacrificed so much, and now, in my time of need, this was how she saw me? Understanding has nothing to do with it, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. This is about respect, about family. And right now, I don't know if I even recognize you, Emily. Without another word, she turned and left, leaving me alone with my thoughts, my pain, and a heart heavier than it had been before. Lying in the sterile silence of the hospital room, the buzzing of my phone felt like a lifeline to the outside world. When I saw it was Janice, my friend who's been in real estate since we were in high school, my heart skipped a beat. She never called without good reason. Hey, Janice. What's up? I tried to keep my voice steady, despite the dread settling in my stomach. Sarah, I don't know how to say this, but I was at the office today, and I saw a listing. It's your house, Sarah. Emily and that husband of hers are trying to sell it. The room spun. What? That can't be right. My house? Are you sure? As sure as I'm standing here. I thought it was a mistake, but I checked the documents myself. They've forged your signature, Sarah. It's listed under their names now. Anger and disbelief churned inside me. But, how could they? I never gave them any permission. This has to be illegal. It is, Sarah. You need to act fast. I knew she was right. My next call was to Mike, an old friend from college who ended up becoming a lawyer. Explaining the situation left me feeling exposed and vulnerable, but Mike's calm demeanor was a small comfort. Sarah, this is serious. We need to file for an injunction immediately to stop the sale. I'll need every piece of documentation you have on the house. We can argue forgery and undue influence, but we have to move quickly. Okay, Mike. I'll get you everything. I can't believe Emily would do this to me. To her own mother. It's unfortunate, but let's focus on protecting what's yours. I'll start the paperwork. Hang tight, Sarah. Hanging up, I was enveloped by a profound sense of betrayal. My own daughter, scheming behind my back to steal the only thing I had left from my grandmother. The thought was suffocating. Days passed in a blur of legal documents and phone calls. Mike was a godsend, navigating the legal maze with a precision that gave me hope. Meanwhile, I couldn't bring myself to confront Emily, not yet. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. For days, I interacted with Emily and Alex as if all was well, all the while coordinating with Mike to build our case. Their casualness around me, the way they dodged my gaze, only fueled my resolve. I had to protect what was rightfully mine. When Emily came to visit, feigning concern, I had to stifle a scoff. Hey, Mom. Just checking in. How are you holding up? Her words were hollow, and I played along. I've been better, Em. But I'm hanging in there. How's things at home? I prodded, curious if she'd slip up. Good, good. Alex and I are just, keeping busy. The evasion in her voice was palpable. The conversation danced around the elephant in the room, both of us playing our parts in a twisted performance. After she left, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow for the relationship we once had. But this betrayal? It was a line crossed, and there was no turning back. Mike called later with updates. "We're all set, Sarah. You ready for this?" "More than ever, Mike. Let's do it." As I lay in my hospital bed, staring at the sterile ceiling, I couldn't help but marvel at the situation. My own daughter, plotting against me, and here I was, about to turn the tables. Released from the hospital for a bit, I have started to fulfill my plan. Janice was in on it too. She helped me set it up so I'd show up at my own house, pretending to be interested in buying it. The thought alone had my heart racing with a mix of nerves and a strange sense of excitement. I arrived at the house, dressed differently, hoping Emily and Alex wouldn't recognize me right off the bat. The moment they opened the door, their faces went from eager to sell to outright horror. It was almost comical, seeing them scramble to make sense of what was happening. "Mom? What are you doing here?" Emily stammered, her face pale. "Thought I'd take a look at my own house, considering it's up for sale and all." "Nice listing, by the way," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Alex, ever the smooth talker, tried to recover. "Sarah, look, this is just a big misunderstanding. Let's talk about this." "Misunderstanding?" I scoffed. "Forging my signature and trying to sell my house is a bit more than that, don't you think?" Without another word, I stepped outside and called the police. As I explained the situation, I watched Emily and Alex from the window, their expressions a mix of fear and disbelief. When the police arrived, Emily and Alex were taken away in handcuffs. Their pleas and cries echoed down the street, but my heart was hardened against them. The betrayal was too deep, the wound too fresh. After the dust settled, the quiet in my house was both eerie and soothing. It was just me now, alone with the echoes of a life that once was. The days melded into one another as I focused on my health, on healing not just my body, but my battered heart as well. Miraculously, my health began to turn a corner. The cancer that once seemed like a death sentence slowly retreated into the shadows, giving me a new lease on life. The trial of Emily and Alex was a spectacle, one I attended with a heavy heart. Watching them, so small and defeated in the courtroom, stirred something in me, but it wasn't enough to overcome the betrayal. They pleaded, tears streaming down their faces, begging for my forgiveness. But forgiveness was a river that had run dry. The court handed down a modest sentence for their crimes, but no punishment could right the wrongs they'd done. Word got around, as it always does in small towns. Some folks shook their heads, sking at my hard-heartedness, unable to understand how I could turn my back on my own flesh and blood. But most knew the pain of betrayal, and they stood by me, offering nods of understanding and silent support. It's funny, really, how something so earth-shattering can shift your perspective. I used to care so much about what people thought, about being the perfect mother, the perfect neighbor. But life has a way of teaching you that perfection is a facade, and approval is a fickle friend. One afternoon, as I sat on my porch, basking in the solitude, Janice stopped by, her presence a welcome break in the monotony. "Sarah, you're looking better every day," she said, taking the seat beside me. I smiled, a genuine smile that reached deep into my weary soul. "Feeling it, too. It's funny how peace can heal you in ways medicine can't." Janice nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "Not everyone agrees with your choices, you know. But I think you're one of the bravest people I know." I let out a chuckle, a sound tinged with sadness and wisdom born of pain. "Brave? No, I wouldn't say that. Just tired. Tired of bending until I break. Now, I'm just living for me, and if that's brave, then so be it." Janice squeezed my hand, a silent show of solidarity. "Living for yourself is all any of us can do, Sarah. And for what it's worth, I think you're doing a damn fine job at it." As she left, her words lingered in the air like a benediction. I turned my face to the sky, letting the warmth of the sun seep into my bones. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of something like hope, like joy. So, I live. I live for the quiet mornings and the peaceful nights. I live for the friends who stood by me and for the strength I found in solitude. I live with the knowledge that not everyone will understand my journey, and that's okay. Because at the end of the day, it's my journey, and mine alone.